Brilliant. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Wolf of Wallsend. I've totally forgotten what episode this is. Not because I've got too many of them to remember, just because I don't know my arse from my elbow and I'm trying to breathe some life back into this. But special guest who's probably wondering why the Wolf of Wallsend. The wall ends, Hadrian's Wall, right next to where I live, so put two and two together and stole a name. But we've got Antoine Marsden here, co-founder, chief sales officer of SalesDRIIVN, someone I've had the pleasure of working with closely over the last 4 or 5 months, someone that I met in my past life, and I've even passed him a bit of business. So Antoine, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? I don't know if you can do it more justice than that, but
I don't know if I could. There's not much to say. But obviously founded SalesDRIIVN in 2020, but before that, I've had a career in sales since leaving uni. But even before that, if I'm very honest, I used to sell stuff at school, and used to come home with more money than what my mum gave me, which would always make an eyebrow. So, sales I've been in since a very young age, and always been fascinated with it. Kind of really interesting career through events and traveling the world by selling events and whatnot, and then found myself in a place during the pandemic to be able to do something. I don't know. I thought that was going to be life changing, which it has been. So
well, that's exciting. Actually, I never put two and two together of when when the business was founded. So that's quite interesting that was a kind of mid-COVID change of events for you in a new path. That's brilliant. So hustler and entrepreneur by heart. Definitely. Well, that ties in really nicely to the first question, and I think I need to find a new first question actually, because I'm hearing this on a lot of other podcasts and it's getting a bit dried out. But we've had a few conversations in the past. You say you've had 15 or more years on the phones, right? Smashing the phones. So I was just going to ask how you ended up in sales, right? You come out of university, so I'd love to know what you studied there. I studied advertising. I'm still paying for it now. It's done jack shit for me personally. I'm still paying for it now. It seems to keep going up as well. But how did you manage to get into sales, and how have you managed to get 15 years of being a killer cold caller under your banner?
Well, it's an interesting one because even though I had this kind of knack for selling stuff and making my own money when I was at senior school, when I went to uni, I studied sports and exercise science. So I did a tech in sports and exercise science at college, and then I went off to uni and did a degree in that there. But in truth be told, I completed 3 years. I had one more year to complete, and I hated it. But for 2 years at least, I think of university, I was pretty depressed. I didn't really realize it at the time, but it was a pretty sad time for me. When I was always working throughout university, and then when I left, and I was like, shit, I need to go and find something to actually do and earn some better money. I think I was driving skip lorries at the time, and then there was a job in or an article in the local paper, and it didn't say much. It was just like, come and work in sales. You can make X amount of money a year in commission. And I was like, all right, sold. Let me go and see it. And I was living in Colchester at the time, traveled to Chelmsford, went above a B&Q, went for some mass group interview, had no idea who they were, what they were selling, but it looks like there was so much energy and hype.
Momentum.
I didn't know at the time, but they had TVs on the wall playing Boiler Room. I didn't know it was Boiler Room. It just looked like a cool. I was like, yeah,
Vin Diesel. We're watching Fast and Furious.
Exactly. And then, somehow, fortunately, no idea how it happened, but I got the job. And that really kind of kick-started my career in I guess, that was kind of B2C. And then from there, my next job was in B2B. And that's where that whole kind of, shift, I guess, happened.
Yeah. One of my best mates, Tony, he left his final year at Sunderland Uni, sports science as well. He just said it didn't turn out to be what he was expecting. I think he always planned on working for Newcastle United, and helping the first team and all that stuff. And I think he gave up on that idea, and he rides bikes for a living now. So, yeah, and it's interesting actually. Just to get back onto that subject. I think starting off in B2C, would you say that if you were to look back now in hindsight, right, you could start phoning businesses or you could start phoning people on the street? Which one do you think would make you tougher and more tenacious? Because I personally think phoning B2C is probably you probably get more shit,
Mm.
right? It's probably tougher. So I don't know. I'd love to hear your take on that one. If you think it would be a preference, if you think starting off on B2C made you what you are now in B2B quicker, if that makes sense, it routed you faster.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think potentially, like, especially with the job that I had, that you had to phone, you had to call, and you had to get the credit card. There was
Yeah,
no buyer journey. There was
yeah.
no kind of,
Process.
yeah, there wasn't any of that. It was, okay, great, like, this is the pitch. You get them on the phone, and then you get that interest, and you get the credit card.
Mm,
So it was, for me, like, a very, like, thrown in the deep end. Like, there were people that were being fired after 2 days, 3 days.
yeah,
A week
cutthroat like
later,
that.
if you're there, you're a veteran, right? So it was like, wow, like, so I think it really helped me to just get into very, very quickly understanding the process and understanding the psychology of
Yeah.
how people buy and why people buy, because
Mm,
we're selling something that, I mean, it was the idea, everything that they created and the idea of it was an interesting product, right, for somebody who owned a business or a trade business. But I think it was a case of that, having people that are very protective over their own business because it's their money, and then the
sure.
marketing, they having to wear that hat as well. I quickly realized what being more of an advisor than a salesman actually sounded like,
Yeah.
just from that journey of speaking to somebody from the very first time in the cold call and trying to get their credit card, to then having a number of conversations and actually understanding why people bought, what the
Mm,
reasons were for buying it, and then how I could tap into those to then make my calls much better as I went through my career.
brilliant. Antoine, the veteran in the game, he's been here for 2 months. Brilliant.
It was really interesting because the setup of it was that you had, what's the way that you put it? It's almost like you've got like a mid-market team, and then you've got an enterprise team, right? And then it's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
enterprise team are, they're all swinging their dicks around, and they're like, yeah, corporate, we do the big money deals, and
Yeah,
I'm
the big
happy
boys.
for 200 quid, right? And 300 quid and whatnot. But I got to a point where I was maybe selling 9, 10 of those a week. And people are like, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing this? And I'm just like listening to other people
Yeah,
around and kind of just
sponging up.
trying to take what they're doing and then maybe apply it to what I'm doing, all the best bits. And then that just started blowing up for me. And then you've got the little whispers from the other side of the office that are saying, oh, you should come and sell on corporate. You should come over here. You
Yeah.
get money and all that kind of stuff. So but then I left after 4 months because they didn't pay me.
Brilliant.
So yeah, that was that story. But then, everything leads to something, right? And interestingly enough, that job is what led me to my first corporate job
Yeah.
in London, and then that's where I got into event sales, and
Mhm.
my career really kind of took off from there.
Spot on, mate. Spot on. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Leeways quite nicely into the question that I'm going to ask next, and keep it, I'd say, short and sweet for both, really. But I was wondering what the highest point of your sales career so far has been, and your lowest point. I'm not blowing smoke up anyone's arse, but I think the highest point in my career has probably been the last 4 months. Just
Mm.
coming into a new challenge, meeting new people, working with new businesses, not having a big quota over my head so I can take it all in without the stress of quarter end and all that stuff. Though I am hungry for a quarter still. It's kind of having the devil on your back's a good thing for me, I think.
Mm.
Low point was when I first joined my last company. Now, I started on the phone selling financial services, selling pension transfers, highly illegal now in the UK. Lucky I got paid before it went all in the news and it became illegal. Um, but I started the financial advice qualifications through that company. And I was hoping to get into that field of work and be an advisor. They were all living the high life, right? Flying back and forth from Dubai. They all had custom tailored suits with their custom name initials on the wrists of their shirts sewed in and stuff, and I thought those were the boys. So I started that qualification, and that business wound up. I started a new job as an SDR at a company called Durham Lane, but about 2 months, I was still doing all of my qualifications during that transition. But I was becoming less and less engaged. I wasn't in the world, the environment. I wasn't surrounded by all of that. I was surrounded by all this sales stuff, pathways and this career. But I tried to keep focused on it because I knew that it was a great career, right? Being a financial advisor, of course. But about 2 months into my role there, I remember one day, it was the day that my final exam was supposed to have been. And I hadn't done any prep or anything for it for weeks. And I was sat there thinking, I was like, do I go to this exam later today? Or do I just, and take a risk knowing I'll probably fail? Or do I just try out the sales thing and just see where this takes me? And I almost took, I was pretty depressed on that day and that whole week. Sat there making, 50, 60, 70, 80 phone calls, thinking I've got a career path waiting there that I could follow. Anyway, it was definitely the right choice to sack it off, but that was probably the lowest point in my sales career, thinking, is it actually a career for me?
Yeah.
And obviously high points now, so I said keep it brief, and I've just waffled on there for a few minutes, but I'd love to know, 'cause I appreciate it could open a Pandora's box for people, but like the highs and lows for you, mate?
So I think the low point was about 2014. So I'd come off, and it's difficult. I probably got two high points, but the low point was sandwiched in between them a little bit because I'd just come off the back of growing a portfolio of events from about 450 grand to about 1.2, 1.3 million. And then my stock was high. I was like, I'd grown this team. I'd been able to kind of re-energize this dying brand and portfolio. And then I was offered a position elsewhere. And, great money, was in advertising sales, funnily enough. Great position, leading the team, everything that I'd been doing, except it was going to be, go larger, which was exactly where my mindset was at that time. And got into the company and I felt I as I do with everything, go into it with huge amounts of enthusiasm and see how I was going to make all of this money and do all this great stuff, and it didn't quite pan out that way to the point where even though I was going in and I was performing as expectations, I didn't know the culture of the company, which then started to become apparent when one day I walked in and they didn't pay half the salary. And then
it's a recurring theme for you, Antoine. I think you've been picking the wrong ones.
This is in 2014. When it first happened, it was in 2005, 2006.
Yeah.
Right, fair enough. You don't expect to find that now, but that was just a complete surprise to me. And then when I was basically challenged to win it back.
The other half.
The other half.
Yeah.
Like, if you do this amount next month, then so then I done double that amount the following month and still didn't get it back. And then that just led to this really bad energy. Obviously at that time, I just moved into a new house. It was important and imperative that I had this around me, and it was just it took a really big toll on basically my
everything.
Head.
Yeah.
And then I ended up leaving there to obviously get out of that scenario. But then it dragged on for a year later in order to go through the courts and get my money and all that.
Really?
Kind of stuff. Yeah. But then the high of the high after, I would say that increasing that portfolio from 400 odd grand to over 1.2 million.
Yeah, silver lining there.
Yeah, I
Or
think
something to be proud of, even though it was on the wrong terms.
so
Yeah,
that was really cool. But I think for me, the real pride I have is in building sales driven and
yeah,
building a
definitely.
company that out of nothing, creating a product out of nothing, and being able to actually take it to market and have people invest in your business and have people pay you for a service that you're still figuring out essentially in some
Yeah,
cases, and it's been an incredible feeling to be like, okay, like everything I've learned over the last 15 years, I've actually then had to take a shitload of learning on top of that in a very short space of time.
yeah,
All of that
business 101, right? Yeah.
marketing and operations and
Hmm.
planning and all that stuff that I never had to
Hmm.
do as a sales guy in a company, all of a sudden I have that to do. But then realizing that actually where a lot of companies may struggle, where we're able to get ahead is the fact that we know how to sell. And so being able to create that service and that offering and then develop the sales discussion and the messaging around it to then go and sell it to people who then go and pay for it has been like mind blowing for me.
Yeah, it's pretty damn impressive what you guys have been able to do in a matter of a couple of years,
Mm.
2, 3 years now. Because I remember naturally now you're all over my socials because we talk on there a lot,
Mm.
support each other's stuff. But I remember even before we had our first conversation, I was seeing you all over the socials. You know, your posts, Shane's posts, people like Jerry mentioning you and stuff like that. And I think having been in the outsourced inside sales world and outsourced demand gen world, it takes a while to build a brand because you're hinged a lot on reputation.
Yeah.
You've got to, you've got to build your reputation. You can't, most people can't just go out to the market and just have a fully functioning, winning big business outsourcing firm. They've got to go through the shit, the trial and the tribulation and understand what works and then scale it up. And I think you've taken the good, the bad and the ugly from what you've saw out in the market. You probably had dealings previously with those types of businesses. And I guess the point at which you are now, you and Shane and the rest of the sales driven team there, it's pretty significant how quickly it's all came about. You're all over the place now, so I can understand why that's definitely something to be proud of. So
It's
yeah,
been an interesting journey, put it that way.
yeah, outsourced sales is very interesting, isn't it? We always have a little bit of a talk around this. It's really hard to get right because if you're someone like myself and you're coming into an SDR role and you've got things in the back of your mind like, oh, I've got this degree at university, I've got this potential avenue, this potential avenue. Takes a few years in sales before you start seeing that there's people out there earning easily 6 figures a year. Basic, never mind with on target earnings and all that stuff, and you don't see it very early on. So I think what you've been able to do with your model and your talent is kind of correcting one of the biggest pains, I would say, for people looking to invest in outsourced services. I imagine it's a pain for people who have to manage that as well, is
Mm.
keeping the talent right, keeping
Yeah.
the business growing, scaling, because, SDRs and BDRs and, even AEs, people who are still smashing the phones, they jump around a lot, right?
That's
So you're
right.
keeping a good team and you're fostering them up well. This is a question that I've been excited to ask you because you better say what I'm hoping you're going to say. So these are some bit easier questions, bit lighter questions, right? These couple, but what's your favorite sales tool? What could you not do your job without? What makes it
Oh,
fun, exciting? I've literally just teed this up so easily here, haven't I, mate?
I can't think. It begins with an O. I can't remember the name of it.
Microsoft
Connect,
Office.
mate, Connect and Sell has been an absolute game changer in terms of SEP. Like we've tested, we've rightly or wrongly, we've tested a
Yeah,
shitload of technology in this company since we started. Because when we started the business, it was just on pure old school dialing.
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, yeah, let's get a list, let's get a phone, and then let's just bang the numbers, right? And we wanted to find as much efficiency within our process as possible, which led us down the path of obviously looking at the tech stack and how we put all that
Mm,
together and what works
mm.
with what. But I think I'd seen Connect and Sell like years before. So I remember
Yeah.
like 2018, 2017, 2018, I was seeing, is it Seth?
Yeah. Seth Weinstock, I
Seth
think
Weinstock.
over in the States. Yeah.
Yeah, so I kept on seeing him in my feed. I don't know how he's getting in my feed. I just kept on seeing his stuff, and I was like, okay, like looks interesting. Like I'm still there in my normal job, doing 90 dials every 90 minutes or whatever. And I was like, okay, I don't know what it is. I can't really make out what it actually does, but it looks pretty cool and it sounds pretty cool. But I don't know, if this is going to be something I'll ever be able to use. And then fast forward to now, we're building this business and we want to find a more effective way of generating conversations, I guess, and
Hmm.
the speed to those conversations, actually building up the velocity and generating pipeline as quickly as we can. And yeah, Connect has been a game changer for that, because who knew that
Yeah.
a system that delivers that to you at the push of a button without you having to do all of that manual effort. That's been,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
nice things to be
It,
able to use. If you ever, years ago, right, if you didn't have a pension to be able to pick up the phone, and because there was that job I told you about where I ended up going to court, I was doing 300 dials a day, manual
yeah.
dials a day.
Yeah. It was 200 for me. Otherwise, you're not going home at 5 o'clock. You
Exactly.
stay there until you hit your number and you can piss
Yeah,
off home.
you don't get your chair back till you've done 100. So you're really up against it. And so when now I'm obviously working from home, the pandemic's changed a lot of things, but being able to step into my home office and then still be able to feel so relaxed in my calling environment, and then to be able to just literally press go and then have conversations.
Yeah.
Like,
Something
it just
else, isn't
makes
it?
things so much nicer when look, not everybody likes cold calling and not everybody wants to be doing that for a long amount of time, but you're always building your skills. You feel like you're always having a ton of conversations. You're learning new things all the time, and you're potentially booking meetings for your company. So, what's not to love about that?
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it there because this sounds like a plug and I'm not on commission.
Yeah.
So no, but I was a customer for, almost a year before joining the business. I jumped at the opportunity when it came up, and not even just for people who smash the phones. Anyone who needs a prospect, full stop. It is a game changer. Um, so yeah, that's good. And my last question, this is my favorite question. I tend to get some of the same responses on this one, actually. They're all linked to the title of the podcast, but what's your go-to sales, or maybe even let's just call it like entrepreneurial media, right? I say media because film, TV show, might be a podcast, it might be a book, whatever.
Mm.
For me, I think it is Glenn Ross, the film, just because I didn't really that the financial advisors that I was selling those pensions on behalf of were like, you need to watch this film if you're going to work here.
Yeah.
And just the scene where they get a new batch of leads in, and
Hmm.
it's like a fight. It comes in, he's got this docket. I've got 50 new leads here. Only the top earners can get them. You've got 1 week. And then just the film sort of momentum. I think it might be Alec Baldwin actually in that scene, but
Yeah. Yeah.
the way everyone amps up and they're all fighting for this batch of leads, it is in its purest sense the world that I learned this trade in. So I'd love to hear yours, mate.
It's an interesting one, man. I guess I don't know. For me, it's really a myriad of stuff. I kind of like phase in and out of things, right? So
Hmm.
I'm hot on a ton of podcasts, but
Yeah,
I also am an absolute, magnet to YouTube, because you can find anything you
same.
want on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm always on YouTube.
So it's like you just get the best of everything and the amount of learning that you can take. And this isn't just from, I mean, this is sales, but then if you dive into the psychology of sales as well and how people actually react to it. So I do a lot of thinking about the buyer perspective and how they
Yeah,
by
Putting
sellers.
yourself into those shoes, their
Yeah,
shoes. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of that I really buy into. For me, if you're ever looking at films, like unfortunately, it's what I kind of know, right? Which is the films where you watched what it seemed like, the busy sales floors, the boiler rooms of the day,
Yeah, like your
stuff
first
like that.
job.
But even if you like Two for the Money, stuff like that, like
Yeah,
things where it's got ingenious scripts about how to either negotiating or selling something, or even hustle films, con films, like con artists.
yeah,
They're sellers, right? They're salespeople.
yeah,
They're the
yeah.
worst
It's a
kind.
good one.
They're salespeople.
Yeah,
So and then also a lot of stories about self-made. I say self-made, but people that go out and push the needle and make things happen.
yeah. Do
So
something from nothing. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I find those all very, very interesting because you have to have a certain mindset and and discipline and
mm,
focus to be able to do those things. And I find those types of people fascinating. So
yeah. Big one for me at the moment. I'm reading. I say I'm reading. I don't read jack shit. I listen to everything. I'll watch it on YouTube, but I'm listening to David Goggins'
yes, yeah,
ebook at the moment. I can't remember what it's called. It might be on here. No, but I'm on. I think I've got 2 hours left. And man, it's just what his mindset. He's just like, I want to be uncommon amongst uncommon men.
yeah,
And now he'll go to Buds or Rangers school or Navy SEALs Hell Week, Navy SEALs school, and he'll just do everything he can to stand out and make people look at him and think, shit, he's an absolute beast.
yeah.
More reps, more time, getting there early, getting there late, and it's hot. He gives out challenges. Every
Mhm.
chapter comes with a challenge, and I've written them down, but it's hard to get it. It's hard to get into it, mate. I've been to the gym for about 2 weeks,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
but that's
yeah,
a big one for pushing and pushing and pushing at the moment. He's telling the story about how I think he broke his ankle or he cracked his fibula or tibula, whatever the shin bone is, and then he had like 25 miles left to go in an endurance race. And he says he just got a bit of plastic or a bit of wood or something that he found on the side of the road, stuffed it down the front of his boot, laced it up to the point where there was no tension left in those laces, and he just kept on going, kept on going. And you listen to that, and you're sat on your computer clicking away, and you're like, shit, I need to get on the phone, so I need to do something I'm good at, right? Where I can just make myself feel like I'm actually achieving something.
yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Like, I mean, you see those efforts and you feel that it puts you to shame, but I always feel like, it's great to see what the human mind can achieve and
Yeah.
the lengths that people can push themselves to, because even you can only ever aim to be better than you were the day
Mm,
before. And
mm,
if you can make a 0.5% improvement in a way of working or a way of thinking or being able to manage your emotions, it's a win. So the way that I look at that is that if I can make those improvements every day, it doesn't matter whose rate it's at or what acceleration anybody else sees. As long as I can see that
yeah.
growth and that progression, that's all that matters. And
Yeah.
that's my version of my mental toughness and
Yeah.
my focus. You can only apply it to what you're doing, and he's applied it to what he's doing, and he's been unbelievably, wildly successful with it. And
It's
I
brilliant.
don't think there's many people in the world that would have that.
No.
Um, but then, I like to think that's maybe not that many people in the world that can put themselves in.
Yeah, not many people are meant to do that, right? You have to push yourself and push yourself.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, Antoine, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We still need to get a cold calling battle locked in.
Well, I've got some stuff in the pipeline that
Uh,
gonna have to be brought
brilliant.
out. Sure.
Well, then hook me up
No,
into that definitely. But yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you very much for the time. Appreciate it as always. I'm a few minutes later. We're meeting now, so I better boogie along.
no
But
worries.
I've told them. But yeah, let's pick up next week, mate. And again, thank you so much for your time.
No problem, mate. Thank you. Cheers. Take it
Good
easy.
stuff. No
See you, mate.
worries.
Cheers, mate.
Brilliant.